They say that in families like mine, silence is the most expensive currency we trade in. My name is Agnes. I'm 48 years old, and for most of my life, I have been the invisible scaffolding holding up the crumbling facade of the Vance dynasty. While my parents Preston and Constance spent decades curating an image of effortless Manhattan affluence, and my younger sister Clarissa spent her time collecting fiancés and breaking leases, I was the one who balanced the checkbooks in the dark. I was the sensible one. The one who didn't need new gowns for the Met Gala, because as Mother liked to say, Agnes prefers to blend into the wallpaper, dear. It's her nature. I believed them for a long time. I believed that my lack of sparkle was a character flaw, not a survival mechanism. But the morning the bank statement arrived, the heavy cream-colored envelope sitting on the marble foyer table like a loaded gun, I finally realized that my silence hadn't bought me safety. It had only bought them time. The envelope was from the trust. My grandfather, a man of few words but immense foresight, had left a specific bequest to me. It wasn't the millions that flowed into the family pot, but a separate modest fund intended for Agnes's independent endeavors. I had been saving it for 10 years, planning to launch a literacy nonprofit in the city. It was the only thing that was truly mine. The balance should have been $250,000. I sliced the envelope open with the silver letter opener my father kept by the door, a pretentious antique he claimed belonged to a Rockefeller, though I knew he bought it at an estate sale in Jersey. My eyes scanned the columns: withdrawal $85,000, wire transfer, withdrawal $140,000, cashier's check, balance $14.50. The air in the hallway seemed to vanish. I blinked, expecting the numbers to rearrange themselves, for my dyslexia to be playing tricks on me, or for it to be a clerical error. But the dates were clear. The withdrawals had happened 3 days ago. Constance! My father's voice boomed from the solarium, echoing off the limestone walls. Where are my cufflinks, the onyx ones? I walked toward the back of the house, my legs feeling heavy, like I was wading through wet cement. The house was a sprawling estate in Connecticut, purchased when the city became too chaotic for Mother's delicate nerves, though really it was because they had leveraged the Park Avenue apartment to pay off Clarissa's last failed business venture, a boutique dog bakery that lasted 6 months. I found them in the sunroom. My mother Constance was arranging white hydrangeas in a crystal vase, her stiff blonde hair immobile despite the breeze coming through the open French doors. My father Preston was checking his reflection in the glass, adjusting his silk tie. Agnes, darling, Mother said without looking up. Don't just stand there hovering, it's unnerving. Did the caterers call? Clarissa's surprise is scheduled for noon, and everything must be perfect. Where is my money? I asked. My voice was quiet, but it felt like a scream in my throat. Preston turned, frowning. What are you mumbling about? I held up the statement. Grandfather's trust. My account. It's empty. $250,000 gone. Who authorized this? Mother clipped a stem with a sharp snip. She placed the flower deliberately into the vase before turning to me with a look of mild annoyance, the kind one might give a servant who brought the wrong tea. Oh, that? She said, waving a hand dismissively. Agnes, really, don't be dramatic. We had a liquidity issue, a temporary cash flow constraint. We needed to move some assets around to cover the acquisition. Acquisition? I stepped closer. What acquisition? You stole my inheritance. Borrowed? Preston corrected, his face reddening. We borrowed it. We are a family, Agnes. We do not steal from one another. We leverage resources. Clarissa is coming home today. It is a significant milestone. She's 35, Tao, I said, my voice trembling. She's been coming home from failed marriages and rehab stints for 15 years. What milestone is this? She has finished her program, Mother said icily. She is ready to take her place in society. And appearances matter, Agnes. You know that. We couldn't let her arrive in that dreadful rental she was driving. It reflects poorly on all of us. On you, too. The realization hit me so hard I almost laughed. You bought her a car. You drained my life savings money grandfather left specifically for me to buy Clarissa a car. Preston adjusted his cuffs, refusing to meet my eyes. It's not just a car, Agnes, it's a statement. It shows the world that the Vances are still solvent, still powerful. It's an investment in the family brand. Besides, he sniffed, what were you going to do with that money? Buy more books. You have a roof over your head. You have food. Don't be greedy. Greedy. They lived in a house fueled by debt and delusion, and I was the greedy one. I want it back, I said, my hands shaking. I want it back by tomorrow. Mother sighed a long, suffering sound. You are being incredibly selfish. Today is your sister's day. Do not ruin it with your petty accounting. We will discuss finances later when you aren't so emotional. She turned her back on me. Now go change. The guests will be arriving in an hour, and that blouse makes you look like a librarian. I stood there staring at their backs. They didn't fear me. They didn't respect me. To them, I was just another asset to be liquidated when convenient. But they had forgotten one thing. They had forgotten who actually built this family's wealth. And they had forgotten that she was coming to visit. The driveway of our estate was long, winding, and lined with manicured boxwoods that cost more to maintain annually than most people earned in a year. By noon, it was filled with the town's elite, or at least the ones my parents still managed to fool. There were local council members, the vice president of the country club, and a handful of old money neighbors who came more for the free champagne than out of any affection for Preston and Constance. I stood on the periphery near a stone fountain wearing the navy dress my mother hated. I held a glass of sparkling water watching the theater unfold. Clarissa arrived in a hired limousine playing the part of the returning princess to perfection. She stepped out, looking thin and glamorous in a cream silk jumpsuit, her hair highlighted to a brightness that rivaled the sun. "Mommy, Daddy," she squealed, rushing into their arms. It was a performance worthy of Broadway. If I didn't know she had spent the last 6 months living in a luxury wellness center in Arizona on Father's credit card, I might have been moved. "Welcome home, sweetheart," Mother cooed, dabbing at dry eyes. "We missed you so much." "We have a surprise for you," Father announced, his voice booming for the benefit of the audience. He clapped his hands, and the garage doors slowly rolled up. A collective gasp rippled through the small crowd. Sitting there gleaming in midnight blue was a brand new convertible. Not just any car, it was a top-of-the-line European luxury model, the kind with hand-stitched leather seats and an engine that purred like a jungle cat. It was beautiful. It was expensive. It was my literacy nonprofit sitting on 4 rubber tires. "Oh my God!" Clarissa shrieked. She ran to the car, running her hands over the hood. "Is it mine? Is it really mine?" "Of course, darling." Father beamed, puffing out his chest. "Nothing but the best for a Vance. We wanted you to have a fresh start." I felt bile rise in my throat. A fresh start. My grandfather had worked in a steel mill before building his construction empire. He had saved every penny, valuing hard work and education above all else. He had left me that money because he knew I was the only one who respected the labor behind the dollar. Seeing it transformed into a toy for a woman who had never worked a day in her life was a physical blow. I walked over to them. The guests were clapping, sipping their mimosas. I stepped into the circle of celebration, my presence like a cold draft. "It's a lovely car, Clarissa," I said, my voice flat. Clarissa looked at me, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second before brightening again. "Agnes, I didn't see you there. Isn't it amazing Daddy has the best taste?" "He certainly has expensive taste," I said, looking directly at Preston. "It must have cost a fortune. About $250,000, I'd guess." Father's smile froze. His eyes darted to the guests nearby, checking if anyone was listening. He stepped closer to me, gripping my upper arm hard enough to bruise. "Not now, Agnes," he hissed through a clenched smile. "Don't you dare cause a scene." "Why would I cause a scene?" I asked, pulling my arm away. "I'm just admiring the investment. It's important to know where the family assets are going, isn't it? Especially when the assets are borrowed." Mother swooped in, linking her arm through mine and practically dragging me backward. Agnes is just so overcome with emotion, she told the nearby vice president of the bank, ironically, the very bank where my empty trust sat. She's always been the sensitive one. She pulled me toward the buffet table, her grip like iron. If you say one more word, she whispered, her voice venomous, I will cut you off entirely. You will be on the street. Do you understand? This is about survival. If people think we're struggling, the loans get called in. The board starts asking questions. We did this for us. There is no us, I said. There's you and there's the money you steal. You ungrateful little spinster, Mother spat. Who pays for the roof over your head? Who pays for your food? You contribute nothing to this family but gloom. Now smile and go get your sister a glass of champagne. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the terror behind the mascara. She was terrified of being poor. She was terrified of being irrelevant, and she would cannibalize her own child to keep the party going for one more hour. Before I could respond, the sound of gravel crunching under tires turned heads toward the driveway entrance. A black town car, older but immaculately polished, was rolling slowly toward the house. It wasn't a guest we were expecting. The car stopped. The driver, a large man in a simple suit, got out and opened the rear door. A cane emerged, first ebony wood with a silver handle, then a shoe. Sensible black leather. And finally, standing to her full height of 5'10", was Augusta Vance, my grandmother. The silence that fell over the driveway was instant and absolute. My father dropped his champagne glass. It shattered on the pavement, but no one moved to clean it up. Augusta didn't smile. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat, smoothed the front of her tweed coat, and looked at the crowd with eyes that could appraise a building's structural integrity from a block away. Well, she said, her voice rich and carrying without effort, I didn't know we were having a carnival. I suppose someone should tell me why there is a vehicle worth more than this house's equity sitting in the driveway. Grandma Augusta was 82 years old, and she was the only reason the name Vance meant anything in this state. She was a black woman born in the Jim Crow South who had moved north, started a cleaning business, then a logistics company, and finally a commercial real estate empire. She had married my grandfather, a white steelworker turned foreman in 1960, a union that had caused scandals in 2 counties. They had built everything together. When he passed, she doubled the portfolio. She had technically retired 5 years ago, leaving the day-to-day operations to my father Preston. But retired, for Augusta, just meant she wasn't in the office every day. She still held the majority shares, and more importantly, she held the moral high ground. Preston scrambled toward her, kicking the shards of his broken glass under the buffet table as he went. "Mother," he exclaimed, his voice cracking. What a delightful surprise. We didn't know you were coming down from the city. We would have sent the car." "I have a car, Preston," Augusta said, looking at the black sedan. "And I have a driver who doesn't drink before noon." She cast a withering look at the mimosa in Father's hand. She walked past him toward Clarissa and the new convertible. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Augusta stopped in front of the car, tapping the hood with her cane. Tink, tink. "Hello, Grandma," Clarissa said, her voice shrill. She tried to lean in for a hug, but Augusta held up a hand. "Clarissa, you look expensive," Augusta said. She turned to the car. "A Mercedes SL, the twin-turbo V8 if I'm not mistaken." "It's a graduation present," Clarissa lied. She hadn't graduated from anything except a 12-step program that cost $40,000 a month. "Is that so?" Augusta turned her gaze to Constance. "I wasn't aware the company dividends were performing well enough to support a $200,000 bonus. Last I checked, the quarterly report showed a 7% contraction in retail leasing." Mother laughed, a nervous trilling sound. "Oh, Augusta, you know how it is. You have to spend money to make money. It's all about projection. We're celebrating Clarissa's return to the fold." "Projection," Augusta repeated the word like it tasted sour. She finally looked at me. Her expression softened just a fraction. The steel in her eyes melted into something warmer, something that felt like safety. "Agnes," she said, "you look pale. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Grandma," I said, stepping forward to kiss her cheek. She smelled of lavender and old paper money. "You don't look fine. You look like you're carrying a load of bricks," she whispered. Then louder, "I'll be staying for the weekend. I need to review the books. It's been too long since I put my eyes on the ledgers." The color drained from Father's face so completely he looked like a corpse. The The books, Mother, surely that's not necessary. We have accountants. Everything is digital now. "I know how to read a spreadsheet, Preston. Don't insult me," she snapped. "Prepare the guest suite, and someone get this car out of the driveway. It looks ostentatious." The party disintegrated quickly after that. The guests, sensing the change in barometric pressure, mumbled their excuses and fled. Within 20 minutes, it was just us. Inside the house, the atmosphere was frantic. Mother was screaming at the housekeeper to change the linens in the east wing, while Father was frantically making phone calls in his study, presumably trying to hide money or lack thereof. I found Augusta in the kitchen making her own tea. She refused to let the staff do it. "They never get the water hot enough," she always said. "They're terrified of you," I said, leaning against the counter. "Good," she replied. She took a sip of Earl Grey. "Fear makes people sloppy, and sloppy people reveal their secrets." She looked at me over the rim of her cup. "Speaking of secrets, Agnes, why did your father look like he was going to vomit when I mentioned the car? And why do you look like you've been crying?" I hesitated. I had been trained well in the art of family silence, but looking at her, this woman who had faced down segregated banks to get her first loan, who had built a kingdom out of grit, I realized I couldn't protect them anymore. "They emptied my trust," I said. "Grandfather's bequest, that's how they paid for the car." Augusta set the cup down. She didn't slam it. She placed it down with terrifying precision. The silence that followed was heavy like the air before a tornado. "I see," she said. Her voice was very quiet. "Go upstairs and pack a bag, Agnes." "Pack a bag, why?" "Because we are going into town. I need some fresh air, and you need to drive me. I can't stand looking at your father right now." "Grandma, if you say anything—" "I won't say a word," she promised. "Not yet. I like to have all my facts before I pass sentence. But first I want to see the town square. I haven't sat on my bench in years." She looked down at her clothes, an elegant but severe tweed suit. "And I'm going to change. I want to be comfortable, none of this stiffness." I didn't know it then, but Augusta Vance was preparing for a test that my parents in this town were about to fail spectacularly. 30 minutes later, Augusta emerged from the guest suite. She had shed the tweed suit and the pearls. In their place, she wore a simple, slightly faded floral house dress, a beige cardigan that had seen better days, and comfortable walking shoes. She had tied a silk scarf around her gray hair, but not in a fashionable way, more in the way of a woman who didn't want the wind to bother her while she worked in the garden. She looked ordinary. If you didn't know she could buy the entire zip code, you might mistake her for a retired housekeeper or a grandmother on a fixed income. Mother caught us in the hallway and nearly shrieked. "Augusta, you can't go out like that." "And why not?" Grandma asked, adjusting her cardigan. Because people will talk. You look destitute," Mother hissed. "We have an image, Augusta, especially with the gala coming up tonight. If you're seen in town looking like that, people will think we've lost our money." "Constance," Grandma said, her voice dry, "if your reputation hangs on the thread of my cardigan, then you have bigger problems than my wardrobe. I built this town's library. I think I can wear what I please." "Please let Agnes drive you in the Mercedes," Mother begged. "At least take the new car." "I wouldn't be caught dead in that vulgar tin can," Grandma said. Agnes, take your Subaru. We took my car, a 10-year-old station wagon with a dent in the rear bumper. The drive into town was quiet. The town of Highfield was an enclave of wealth, a place where the police drove SUVs that looked like military tanks, and the trash cans were hidden behind ivy-covered lattices. The town square was the jewel of the district, a manicured park surrounded by high-end boutiques, artisan coffee shops, and the pristine city hall. "Drop me here," Augusta said as we pulled up to the curb near the central fountain. "Are you sure?" I asked. "It's a bit chilly." "I have my sweater. I just want to sit on the bench, read my newspaper, and feed the pigeons. It clears my head." She patted my hand. "You go run your errands. Come back for me in an hour. And Agnes—" "Yes, Grandma. Don't worry about the money, I'm working on it." I watched her walk slowly to a bench near the statue of the town founder. She sat down with a heavy sigh, pulling a folded Wall Street Journal from her tote bag along with a small bag of birdseed. She looked small against the backdrop of the imposing marble courthouse. She looked vulnerable. I hated leaving her there, but I knew better than to argue with Augusta Vance. I drove off to the pharmacy to pick up her heart medication, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would ever get my money back from parents who had likely already spent the rest on catering. The town square was busy. People in designer athleisure wear walked their purebred dogs. Nannies pushed strollers that cost more than my car. And sitting in the middle of it all was an elderly black woman in a faded dress tossing seeds to the birds. It should have been a peaceful scene, but in Highfield, peaceful often meant exclusive. And anything that didn't fit the aesthetic was considered a threat. I was only gone for 40 minutes. I wish I had been faster. Officer Bragg was new to the Highfield force. I had heard about him from the whispers at the grocery store, a transfer from a rougher precinct in the city, hired because the mayor wanted a tougher stance on the invisible crime that supposedly plagued our gated paradise. He was a man who wore his uniform like a suit of armor, his sunglasses reflecting the world back distorted and dark. He was patrolling the square on foot, his hand resting habitually near his belt. He scanned the park looking for violations. Skateboards, unpermitted musicians, anyone who looked like they didn't pay property taxes. His eyes landed on Augusta. She was minding her own business. The pigeons were cooing at her feet. She had her reading glasses perched on her nose, engrossed in an article about commodities futures. Bragg walked over his boots, crunching loudly on the gravel path. He stopped right in front of her, casting a shadow over her newspaper. "Ma'am," he said. His voice wasn't a question. It was a command. Augusta didn't look up immediately. She finished the paragraph she was reading, then slowly lowered the paper. She peered over her spectacles at him. "Good afternoon, officer," she said politely. "You can't be here, Bragg said. "I beg your pardon." "No loitering. This is a private park for residents and authorized guests. We've had complaints about vagrants feeding the rats." He gestured to the pigeons. Augusta looked at the birds, then back at him. A small, amused smile played on her lips. "I assure you, young man, these are pigeons, and I am simply enjoying the sunshine." "Do you live here?" Bragg asked, crossing his arms. He looked her up and down, the faded floral dress, the scuffed, comfortable shoes, the worn tote bag. He made a calculation, and he got the math wrong. "I have family in town," Augusta said. Which was true. She didn't mention that she technically owned the mortgage on the building behind him. "Uh-huh. Family," Bragg scoffed. "Look, we have a shelter downtown about 5 miles east. The bus stops on the corner, but you can't sleep on the bench." "I am not sleeping. I am reading the Wall Street Journal." "Don't get smart with me." Bragg stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I'm telling you to move along. You're disturbing the peace." "I am sitting quietly," Augusta said, her voice hardening. The steel was coming back. "The only person disturbing the peace is you casting a shadow over my light. Please step aside." Bragg's face turned a dangerous shade of red. He wasn't used to defiance, certainly not from someone he viewed as powerless. "ID," he snapped. "Give me your ID." "I didn't bring my purse," Augusta said calmly. I left it at the house. I only have my paper and my birdseed. No ID loitering. Refusing a lawful order. Bragg unhooked his radio. All right, that's it. Stand up. I will do no such thing. My granddaughter is picking me up in 20 minutes. I said stand up. Bragg reached out and grabbed Augusta's arm, the same arm she used to support herself with her cane. He yanked. Augusta gasped in pain, dropping her newspaper. Unhand me. You're under arrest for trespassing and resisting an officer, Bragg announced loudly, performing for the few people who had stopped to watch. A woman in yoga pants frowned but didn't intervene. A man in a suit looked away, checking his phone. You are making a mistake, Augusta said, her voice shaking with rage, not fear. A very expensive mistake. Yeah, tell it to the judge. Bragg pulled her up from the bench roughly. Her cane clattered to the ground. That was the moment I turned the corner in my Subaru. I saw the cane hit the ground first. Then I saw the blue uniform. Then I saw my 82-year-old grandmother being twisted around by a man 3 times her size. I slammed on the brakes, leaving the car in the middle of the street with the door open. I didn't care about the traffic. I ran. I had never run so fast in my life. Get your hands off her, I screamed. Officer Bragg looked up startled, but he didn't let go. He had Augusta pinned against the bench, now trying to cuff her hands behind her back. She wasn't fighting, but her joints were stiff, and she was grimacing in pain. Back off, lady, Bragg shouted at me. Police business. That is my grandmother. I reached them and shoved Bragg's shoulder. It was a stupid move, touching a cop, but I was blinded by fury. Let her go. She's 80 years old. She's under arrest, Bragg panted, finally clicking one cuff onto Augusta's thin wrist. And you're next for obstruction if you don't step back. Arrest for what, sitting? I demanded. I looked at Augusta. Grandma, are you okay? I am. Indignant, Augusta said, breathless. Get his badge number, Agnes. I don't care who you are, Bragg spat. She has no ID, she's loitering, and she refused to leave. This is a zero-tolerance zone. She built this square, I screamed. She donated the land. You idiot, look at the plaque. I pointed to the bronze plaque on the fountain not 10 feet away. Dedicated to the citizens of Highfield by the Vance family, 1985. Bragg didn't look. He didn't care. He was too deep in his power trip. I don't care about plaques. I care about compliance. By now, a crowd had gathered. Phones were out. People were filming. Officer Bragg. The voice came from the steps of City Hall. It was deep, booming, and familiar. Mayor Whitman was walking down the stairs, flanked by Chief Henderson. They had likely been in a budget meeting. What is going on here? The mayor asked, adjusting his tie. He looked annoyed at the commotion. Just cleaning up the park, Mr. Mayor, Bragg said, puffing out his chest, still holding Augusta's arm. Caught this vagrant refusing to move. She got aggressive. Mayor Whitman walked closer. He squinted against the sun. He looked at the vagrant. He looked at the floral dress. Then he looked at the face. The color drained from Mayor Whitman's face faster than it had from my father's earlier that day. He stopped dead in his tracks. Mrs. Vance, the mayor whispered. Chief Henderson, a man who had been on the force for 30 years and knew exactly who signed the checks for the Police Benevolent Fund, looked like he was having a stroke. Officer, Chief Henderson said, his voice terrifyingly low. Release that woman, immediately. But Chief, she... Release her, Henderson roared. Bragg flinched. He unlocked the cuff. Augusta rubbed her wrist, her expression unreadable. Agnes rushed to pick up the cane and handed it to her. Augusta took it, planted it firmly on the ground, and stood up straight. She smoothed her dress. She didn't look at Bragg. She looked directly at the mayor. Gerald, she said to the mayor, using his first name, I see the quality of civil servants has declined since I last audited the municipal bond issuance. Mrs. Vance, I am horrified, Mayor Whitman stammered. He rushed forward, offering his arm, which she ignored. "This is a terrible misunderstanding. Officer Bragg is new. He didn't know." "He didn't know I was rich," Augusta corrected him sharply. "He knew I was black, and he knew I was old, and he decided that meant I didn't belong in my park." She turned to Bragg, who was now looking back and forth between the chief and the mayor, realizing he had just stepped on a landmine. "Young man," Augusta said, "you broke my reading glasses." Just then the final players in the tragedy arrived. My parents. Someone must have called them. Or maybe they saw the commotion from the road. The Mercedes, the new one, screeched to a halt behind my Subaru. Preston and Constance jumped out. "Mother Agnes," Preston yelled, running over. I thought for one brief second that my father was coming to defend his mother. I thought he would punch the cop. I thought he would scream at the mayor. "Officer, I am so sorry," Preston shouted, rushing past Augusta to shake Chief Henderson's hand. "I apologize for the disturbance. My mother, she's elderly. She gets confused. She wanders off. We didn't mean for her to cause trouble." Constance grabbed Bragg's arm. "Please don't arrest her. We can pay the fine. She's just a bit senile. We'll take her home immediately." The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Augusta looked at her son. She looked at her daughter-in-law. She saw them apologizing to the man who had just handcuffed her, throwing her dignity under the bus to preserve their standing with the local authorities. "Senile," Augusta whispered. Preston turned to her, his eyes pleading. "Mother, please. Just get in the car. Stop making a scene." Augusta looked at me, then she looked at the mayor. "Agnes," she said calmly, "get the car. We are going home. I have a phone call to make to the bank." The ride home was silent. Augusta sat in the passenger seat of my Subaru, staring out the window. Her wrist was bruising. "Do you want ice?" I asked. "I want a lawyer," she said, "and I want my ledger." When we pulled into the driveway, the Mercedes was already there. Preston and Constance were waiting on the steps, looking like scolded children who were angry about being scolded. Augusta walked past them without a word. "Mother, wait," Preston called out. "You have to understand. We had to de-escalate. We couldn't have you arrested. It would be in the papers." Augusta stopped. She turned slowly. "You apologized," she said. "We smoothed it over," Constance insisted. "That officer, he was just doing his job. You shouldn't have been sitting there looking like you couldn't afford to be there." "I see," Augusta said. "So my value to you is determined by my costume." "It's not like that," Preston argued. "But we have a standing in this community. We can't be fighting the police in the town square." "You didn't fight for me, duh," Augusta said. "Agnes fought for me. Agnes ran into traffic. Agnes shoved a police officer. You apologized for my existence." She turned and walked into the house. "Dinner is at 7. Do not be late. And bring Clarissa. We have business to discuss." I followed her inside. She went straight to the study. "Agnes," she said, "close the door." I closed it. "Open the safe," she commanded. "I know the combination. Preston hasn't changed it since 1998 because he can't remember new numbers." I opened the wall safe behind the painting. Inside were the family trust documents, the deeds, and the corporate charters. "Bring them all," she said. For the next 3 hours, Augusta Vance went to war. She didn't use guns. She used a fountain pen and a telephone. She called her personal attorney in New York. She called the chairman of the board at the bank. She called the city comptroller. I sat there watching her work. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. "Yes, Jonathan," she said into the phone. "The liquidity clause. Section 4, paragraph B. If the primary trustees demonstrate fiscal irresponsibility or legal liability, yes, exactly. Draft it. Email it to me now." She hung up and looked at the spreadsheet I had printed out for her, the one showing the unauthorized withdrawals from my trust. "They didn't just take your money, Agnes," she said softly, tracing the lines on the paper. "They leveraged the equity in the commercial holdings to secure a line of credit for their lifestyle. They are technically insolvent. They've been robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I am Peter. What happens now? I asked. Now, Augusta capped her pen. Now we eat dinner. The dining room was dimly lit. The crystal chandelier sparkled above the table, which was set with the fine china. Preston, Constance, and Clarissa were already seated. They were dressed for dinner, Preston in a blazer, Constance in silk, Clarissa in a cocktail dress. They were trying to reset the reality to pretend the afternoon hadn't happened. Augusta entered. She had not changed back into her rich clothes. She was still wearing the floral dress and the cardigan. She had a bandage on her wrist. She sat at the head of the table. I sat to her right. "The soup is gazpacho," Constance said brightly. "Chef prepared it specially." "I'm not hungry," Augusta said. "Mother, please," Preston said. "Let's just have a nice meal. We can put this unpleasantness behind us." "Clarissa," Augusta said, ignoring him. "How is the car?" Clarissa beamed, oblivious to the tension. "Oh, Grandma, it's a dream. I drove it around the block. It handles perfectly." "Good," Augusta said. "I hope you enjoyed that drive, because it was your last one." Clarissa's fork clattered onto her plate. "What?" "That car," Augusta said, pointing a finger at her, "was purchased with stolen funds. Specifically, funds belonging to your sister." "That's not true." Clarissa looked at Preston. "Daddy said it was a bonus." "Daddy lied," Augusta said. "Preston, explained to your daughter where the $250,000 came from." Preston wiped sweat from his upper lip. "It was a reallocation of family resources." "It was theft," Augusta corrected. "Grand larceny, actually, stealing from a designated beneficiary trust." She pulled a folder from her lap and slapped it onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud that made the water glasses jump. "I have spent the afternoon reviewing the accounts," Augusta said. "Preston, you have drained the operating capital to below 5%. You have mortgaged the Hamptons house twice, and you stole Agnes's inheritance to buy a toy for a child who is 35 years old." "We had to," Constance cried out. "We have appearances to maintain. If people knew you were broke, they wouldn't come to your parties," Augusta asked. "Well, they are about to find out." "What do you mean?" Preston asked, his voice trembling. "I invoked the competency clause in the family charter," Augusta said calmly. "As of 5 p.m. today, all assets held by the Vance Trust are frozen pending a forensic audit. The credit cards are canceled. The bank accounts are locked." You can't do that," Preston stammered. "I'm the CEO." "I'm the chairman of the board," Augusta said. "And I own 51% of the voting shares. You serve at my pleasure, and I am remarkably displeased." Clarissa stood up. "But what about my car?" "The dealership is coming to pick it up tomorrow morning," Augusta said. "I already called them. Since the check was drawn on a fraudulent transfer, the sale is void." "No!" Clarissa screamed. "You can't take it. It's mine." "Sit down, child," Augusta snapped. The voice of the matriarch cracked like a whip. Clarissa sat. "Now," Augusta looked at Preston and Constance, "let's discuss the police." "The police?" Preston blinked. "Yes, the police officer you apologized to while he was assaulting your mother." Augusta's eyes were cold. "Mayor Whitman called me back an hour ago. He was very eager to make amends. It seems the city leases the land for the police station from Vance Properties. The lease is up for renewal next month." "Oh, God," Preston whispered. "I told the mayor I would be happy to renew the lease," Augusta said. "On one condition: Officer Bragg is fired, and the Vance family issues a public statement supporting the investigation into racial profiling in Highfield." "But that will make us look like liberals," Constance gasped. "The club will be furious." "I don't care about the club, Constance." Augusta slammed her hand on the table. "I care about dignity. I care about the fact that my son stood there and watched a man manhandle me and apologize to him." She took a deep breath. "You have lost your way." You think money makes you better than people. You think it protects you. But money is just a tool, and you are using it to build a cage. She turned to me. Agnes. Yes, Grandma. The money they took from you. It will be repaid. I am liquidating Preston's vintage watch collection and Constance's jewelry insurance policy to cover it immediately. My watches, Preston gasped. Consider it the cost of doing business, Augusta said. And Agnes, you're going to run the foundation. I am. Yes, Preston is fired. He can keep the title of President Emeritus so he doesn't cry in public, but he will have no signing power. You will manage the philanthropic arm. You will manage the trust disbursements. You are the only one in this room who knows the value of $1. The next morning was a blur of activity, but of a very different kind than the day before. At 8 a.m., a flatbed truck arrived. The driver didn't care about the Vance reputation. He winched the Mercedes onto the bed, while Clarissa watched from the window, sobbing into a silk pillow. At 9 o'clock a.m., a team of auditors arrived. They set up in the dining room, taking over the space where we had eaten our gazpacho. Preston tried to give them orders, but the lead auditor simply handed him a letter from Augusta's lawyer and asked him to step aside. At 10 a.m., I walked into the kitchen. Augusta was there dressed in her sharpest suit, navy blue with a pearl brooch. She looked like a queen. Here, she said, sliding a check across the island counter. I picked it up. It was a cashier's check for $250,000, plus interest. Take it, she said. Start your nonprofit. Teach people to read. Do something real. Thank you, Grandma, I said. Tears pricked my eyes. But what about them? I gestured toward the solarium where my parents were sitting in stunned silence. They will be on an allowance, Augusta said. A strict one. If they want to live in this house, they will adhere to a budget. No more galas, no more new cars. If they want luxury, they can earn it. She walked over to the window and looked out at the garden. I failed them, Agnes. I gave them too much. I thought I was giving them a better life than I had, but I just made them weak. I won't make that mistake with you. The fallout in town was swift. The firing of Officer Bragg made the local news. The mayor issued a groveling apology, and the Vance family statement on civil rights was published in the Gazette. My parents were mortified. They refused to leave the house for weeks. But strange things started to happen. People stopped me in the grocery store, not the socialites, but the teachers, the librarians, the small business owners. They shook my hand. They said, "Good for your grandmother." I realized then that the reputation my parents were so obsessed with was hollow. The real reputation, the one that mattered, was the one Augusta had built. Strength, integrity, and the willingness to burn it all down if it wasn't right. 3 months have passed since the incident, as Mother calls it. The house is quieter now. The staff has been reduced. We don't need 3 gardeners, apparently, and Clarissa has actually gotten a job. It's only a part-time receptionist gig at an art gallery, and she complains about it daily, but she goes. She has to. She needs gas money for her used Honda Civic. Preston spends his days playing golf on the public course because we stopped paying the country club dues. He looks healthier, actually. Less red in the face, less stressed about hiding lies. As for me, I opened the literacy center last week. We cut the ribbon in a storefront downtown, not far from the square. Augusta was there sitting in the front row, wearing her floral dress and her comfortable shoes. She held her cane like a scepter. When I stood at the podium to give my speech, I looked at the crowd. I saw the faces of the children we would help. I saw the community that was actually there beneath the veneer of wealth. I looked at my parents sitting in the back row. They looked smaller, humbled. Mother gave me a tentative wave. I waved back. Then I looked at Augusta. She nodded once. A microscopic movement, but from her it was a standing ovation. Money is a strange thing. It can buy cars and houses and silence. But it cannot buy the look in my grandmother's eyes when she stood up to a bully. It cannot buy the feeling of earning your own way. And it certainly cannot buy the peace of mind that comes from knowing exactly who you are. My name is Agnes Vance. For 48 years, I was the invisible daughter. But today, I am the one holding the pen, and I am rewriting the story. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who sell us out for a little bit of comfort. And sometimes the heroes don't wear capes, they wear cardigans and carry canes. It took a crisis for Agnes to find her voice, and it took a grandmother's courage to break a cycle of toxicity that had lasted for decades. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt overlooked by your family, or if you have a Grandma Augusta in your life who taught you what real strength looks like, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story. Who is the rock in your life? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about justice, family secrets, and the long road to redemption.